So today I have a list for you guys of NFL teams that I think have the brightest futures in the NFL. We'll do 10 teams. I first want to say leave in the comments your 10 teams that you think have the brightest futures in the NFL. Now, I have some honorable mentions here because it's hard to put 10 teams on a list out of 32 teams. So with that being said, we'll look at the top left here. I have the Panthers in here. I like the Matt Rule hiring. I think they have enough offensive weapons. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Christian McCaffrey. They're still a quarterback away. Like Teddy Bridgewater's fine, but he's not going to win you a Super Bowl, of course, or even get you to the playoffs in most years. I think Trey Lance would be a great pick for them in the draft. We'll find out what they do. Defensively, I like Jeremy Chin a lot. I like Brian Burns a lot. They need more on defense, but I feel like they're moving in the right direction there. Maybe by another year or so, they could be a competitive team. We'll find out. The Arizona Cardinals seemed like this year was their year. I mean, Kyler Murray got hurt against Seattle at one point, and they were 5-2. So, it sucks for them, of course, but I feel like they have enough pieces there. Chandler Jones comes back from the injury. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, that move was great. So they have talent there. Isaiah Simmons has to get better at linebacker, but I feel like they have talent there. They should be fine going forward if Kyler Murray stays healthy. The Titans are tough because I like their roster. I love Tannehill. I think their offense is really good. My problem with their offense is I feel like they just have it no matter what the game script is, they have to get Derrick Henry 25 carries. Like there's going to be games where you're down and you have to pass the ball more. I feel like they just try to get him 25 carries regardless. That kind of annoys me, honestly, for their offense, but their defense needs some work, that's for sure. They could lose Corey Davis at wide receiver in free agency, so that's something to watch out for. But the Titans, for the most part, have themselves a good team. And lastly, I have the Jets. Now, I know the Jets went 2-14, but this is for future outlook, not now. The Robert Saleh hire was the right one, I feel like. I think he'll be good there. I like some of the rookies they had last year. Of course, Mekhi Becton, Denzel Mims, Bryce Hall was a pretty good pick in the 5th round. So they have guys there. In free agency, they have a lot of money to spend this year. They get C.J. Mosley back from he missed a year with the COVID concerns. They might get Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. I think it'll be Zach Wilson if I had to take, that's what my gut tells me right now. I like Zach Wilson for that offense and the Mike LaFleur offense, which is similar to Kyle Shanahan's scheme. So I feel like that'd be a good fit for the Jets. Hopefully they could trade Sam Darnold for a 2nd round pick or so, maybe a 2nd and a 5th, maybe if they're lucky. But yeah, I feel like right now the Jets, it might take them another year. I feel like maybe by 2022, 2023 it might take them, but I feel like they're at least moving in the right direction. We saw Joe Douglas with the Jamal Adams trade last year getting 2 first-round picks back. It was a good move in my opinion, so we'll find out about those teams. But with that being said, let's jump into number 10. So 10, we have the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns had their biggest question answered this year. Is Baker Mayfield a franchise quarterback? And I think he probably is. He definitely proved that this year. I made a video last offseason talking about how I thought Kevin Stefanski would help, revive Baker Mayfield's career in a way, and it definitely worked out. He had a nice nice season looking at his stats and looking back on it as compared to his year 2, where it was very rough under Freddie Kitchens for a full season, the bad offensive line. Somehow, in one offseason, it seemed like the Browns now have a top 3, it seems like, offensive line unit in football. Wyatt Teller, Jedrick Wills was a nice pick. Even Jack Conklin at right tackle was a nice pickup as well. So the Browns transformed their offensive line from not so good to top 3 in the NFL in basically one offseason. It was very impressive. So based on the offensive line, some of the offensive weapons they have that are young, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham, if he's back, Austin Hooper, who they signed, David Njoku, Rashard Higgins, who is a free agent, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Harrison Bryant, a couple rookies that had some big plays for them this year. So I feel like their secondary on defense is okay. Love Denzel Ward. Carl Joseph could be better. Grant Delpit needs to come back from the injury. Greedy Williams is hurt a lot this year, so they could be better there. Andrew Sendejo was not that good, let's be honest. So they could do better in the secondary, but it's not terrible. I feel like they have a good defensive line. Their linebackers, I feel like, could be a bit better. They relied on B.J. Goodson a lot, who did make a lot of tackles, but he's not the best. I get that. So they could use defensive improvements, but I feel like with Stefanski's creative play calling, their offensive line being really good, and Baker Mayfield making much better decisions this year, they'll be a team that should win 9+ games a year for the next couple years. They should be in a good spot. They could definitely add some talent. They have a good amount of cap space this year as well, which is big, but I feel like the Browns going forward are in a good spot with a young quarterback, some more young players on defense, Myles Garrett, of course. They have a young core that's pretty good, and hopefully for their sake they can keep it going. Number 9, we have the Washington Football Team. Now, Washington was in a pretty bad spot a year ago. There was a lot of sexual misconduct things going on there with, the cheerleaders and some stuff with the owner. Like, it was not good. They hired Ron Rivera, basically made him GM for the year in a way. So, I mean, look, Washington, they had a top 2 defense last year. They were second in total defense in 2020, and they have a lot of young players on rookie contracts. Their best safety, Landon Collins, was out for most of the year with the torn Achilles, I think it was. So they're in a really good spot on defense. They have young defensive studs that are 27 and younger, that are Chase Young, Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Kendall Fuller, Landon Collins, Ronald Darby, Cameron Curl, who was a 7th-round pick at safety, had a pretty nice year for a 7th-round pick especially. So they averaged 2.9 sacks per game on defense. They were top half against the run as well. They obviously need to find a quarterback. That's their problem, because Alex Smith at 36, 37 years old, not really the answer. Kyle Allen was not the answer. Taylor Heineke, yes, he was good in the playoff game, but still not the answer. So these guys are not long-term solutions at quarterback, but they have good weapons. They have Terry McLaurin. They have Logan Thomas, who came on at tight end. Antonio Gibson, the former wide receiver, was great at running back. Cam Sims made some plays at wide receiver for them, but they need a quarterback, linebacker on defense, a wide receiver, but they're close to being legit, is what I'm trying to say. So they're not that far off. The problem is, they have to find that quarterback, and that's a tough position to find, a very tough position to find. So as long as they find themselves a quarterback, they'll be a very good team, but can they find that guy? That's why they're number 9 and not higher, so we'll find out going forward. At number 8, I have the 1-15 Jacksonville Jaguars. Sometimes going 1-15 is a good thing, especially when a generational quarterback, as they say, is number 1 in this draft. So yes, getting Trevor Lawrence is definitely why I have them on here. If the Jags were number 2 overall, number 3, I would not have them on the list, but getting Trevor Lawrence just gives you these endless possibilities of what could happen in the future. I feel like if Trevor Lawrence lives up to 80% of the hype even, this team will be in a good spot. So the Jags right now have the most salary cap space going into this offseason. That's good to see. A ton of draft picks. We'll get into that later. But even on the roster right now, they have some young offensive talent like DJ Chark, who was awesome 2 years ago. Had ups and downs this year. I feel like a lot of it was quarterback play. Laviska Shenault showed some flashes as a rookie, of course. James Robinson, the undrafted running back, was awesome. They have an offensive line that's it's not good, but it's not terrible either, I feel like. Jawan Taylor needs to get a bit better. Andrew Norwell's still there. AJ Cann, they have good guards. I feel like they can use a couple more tackles, especially if Taylor never pans out. But they have young defensive playmakers. Miles Jack, CJ Henderson was pretty good in year 1. A lot of ups and downs. He started off great, but still, he could be fine going forward. Josh Allen, the pass rusher, got hurt this year, but in 2019, he proved he was legit. Caleb Chason, I don't know what to expect, honestly. We'll see if he grows into his body and becomes better, but even Joe Schobert was not a terrible veteran signing by them last year. So they have some pieces. They definitely need to get better on defense. But as I said, having Trevor Lawrence just gives you this ceiling that most teams don't have. If Trevor Lawrence is this good as most people think he will be, they'll be fine in a couple years. So the Jags have 10 draft picks in the first 5 rounds this year. That's very good. Urban Meyer's now there. New GM named Trent, I think it's Balk. I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Trent Balk. He was with the 49ers at one point as their GM. We'll see if those guys can get together, get themselves some good signings, good offseason moves, a good draft. If they have a couple good offseasons, the Jaguars, they can be an elite team by 2023, 2024. Yes, we're looking way in the future here, I feel like. But at the same time, if Trevor Lawrence is legit and you give him a team around him, this team can be something in a couple years. At number 7, we have the San Francisco 49ers. So it seems like everything that could have gone wrong for the Niners did go wrong in 2020. So they are basically a year removed from being basically one Emmanuel Sanders deep pass away from being Super Bowl champions, if you put it that way. So I feel like they're still in a good spot. I love Kyle Shanahan. Awesome scheme. Seems like a good coach. Yes, they did lose Robert Saleh to the Jets. They now have DeMeco Ryans, I just saw. DeMeco Ryans, I remember him with Houston. He was with Philly. And I guess now I'm getting old because I remember this guy playing in the league. But yeah, he was a really good linebacker. I feel like as long as he's, a good defensive coordinator, they'll be fine. Losing Robert Saleh is never a good thing, but DeMeco Ryans is probably no slouch himself. So They still need a quarterback because Jimmy Garoppolo, based on the amount of salary cap they can save, he will either be cut or he will be traded. So they need a quarterback next year. There are names out there still. Carson Wentz, who probably will go to the Colts at this point, it seems like. Derek Carr, Sam Darnold. Matt Ryan's always the interesting one because, him and Kyle Shanahan back in Atlanta in 2016 went to a Super Bowl together. Matt Ryan won the MVP. So that is something to watch out for, but I don't think Atlanta wants to trade him right now. Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, and even trading up to number 3 with the Dolphins for Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. Maybe they trade up to number 4 if one of those guys falls. Like, at least the Niners have the possibility to trade up for a quarterback. That's something to watch out for as well. The Niners, they were absolutely destroyed by injuries in 2020. They had Nick Bosa out basically the whole year. Jimmy Garoppolo was out a lot. George Kittle missed a lot of time. Deebo Samuel, Richard Sherman, Solomon Thomas, Raheem Mostert, Dee Ford. Assuming that health is on their side in 2021, this team is still a really good roster. They need a quarterback. That's, of course, the most important thing, which is why they're not higher. But just looking at their roster as a whole, it is still a good roster. They play in a tough division with Arizona, the Rams, the Seahawks, but still, they're a good team. They need to re-sign guys like Trent Williams, Jason Verrett. That's key in my opinion. They are veterans. They're getting a bit older, but they played at a high level. Sign them for 1 or 2 year deals, hopefully, and they should be good to go. But getting a quarterback for the Niners is the main thing. But I trust Shanahan and his scheme, and I think they'll get one quarterback in here through the draft or free agency. I feel like they'll get somebody. I don't see the Niners going into next year with Garoppolo again. I think they'll make a quarterback improvement. Number 6, we have the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins went from maybe they'll go 0-16 to 10-6 a year later, because if you remember in 2019 season, about halfway through when the Dolphins were winless, there were people that legitimately thought the Dolphins would go 0-16. They ended the year going 5-4, I think it was. They ended 5-11. So they made their strides in 2019. Brian Flores has proven to be a good head coach, and it seems like after going 10-6 this year, they're in a pretty good spot. I think the one problem on this roster right now is we don't know if Tua Tagovailoa is a legitimate franchise quarterback or not. Is Tua a game manager only, or is he a guy that back at Alabama where he can fit balls in the tight windows, make more plays with his legs, have a bunch of big plays, deep throws? We have not seen that consistently from Tua in the NFL. But right now, the Dolphins have themselves a really good young roster. They have Xavier Howard, who's a potential Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Byron Jones, the offseason signing, Christian Wilkins, the former draft pick, Andrew Van Ginkel, Kyle Van Noy, even Raekwon Davis at defensive tackle was not too bad for them as a rookie. So they have some guys on this team that are good. And the Dolphins, they do bring in another offensive coordinator, which is the 3rd time in 3 years now. So they have some offensive line issues. Austin Jackson, the previous first-round pick at left tackle, needs to get better. That's for sure. I talked about him the other day for disappointing rookies. But yeah, it really depends how does Tua develop? Can they trade for Deshaun Watson? Sure, but at the same time, I don't know if he'll be traded. So right now, it's Tua. Can he get better? We'll find out. I don't know if I trust him to get better, but if he does, then the Dolphins might find themselves as one of the best teams in football. So we'll find out. But as I said, they have good offensive weapons. They still have Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki. Hopefully Preston Williams can stay healthy. There's a chance they might take a wide receiver at number 3 in the draft. Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase. We'll find out. But yeah, they're in a good spot, especially having Houston's 3rd overall pick this year. They have their own pick at number 18 overall. They have number 36 overall, I think, as well. So they're in a good spot for draft picks. If Miami drafts right and has another good free agency this year, they'll be in a great spot in 2021. Number 5, we have the Baltimore Ravens. So just like Miami, it comes down to the quarterback position, and can Lamar Jackson improve as a passer? We know who the Ravens are as a running team, the best running team in football. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards were awesome this year. Same thing with Lamar Jackson on the ground. But Lamar Jackson showed improvements every year up to his freshman year at Louisville, up until last year. He got better and better every single year as a passer. Then for some reason it came to a halt last year. I don't know what happened to it, but to Lamar's defense, he doesn't have many weapons there. One of his main targets was Willie Snead. He was throwing to Des Bryant at a lot of points. Yes, Mark Andrews is very good. Marquise Brown's inconsistent as hell, so that's another guy you can't rely on. So they could use another receiver or two. I'm not going to blame Lamar Jackson because it's not like he has all the weapons in the world, but even the interior offensive line for Baltimore was not that great. Losing Marshall Yanda was a huge loss for their offense, so they have to get better. A lot of people say Greg Roman's offensive scheme, and I think myself included, is a bit too simple. They need to have more complex routes. It just seems like a lot of the same crap, honestly. So hopefully for their sake, they find a way to fix it. Now, There's a lot of like in-house free agent decisions to make for this team. Matthew Judon's a free agent coming off the franchise tag. Yannick Ngakoue, who they traded for as a free agent. Jimmy Smith, Willie Snead, Pernell McPhee, Derek Wolfe, and Gus Edwards. There's a lot of free agents here that are key players for the Ravens. We'll see what they do with them in free agency. And another thing is Lamar Jackson and his contract extension. He's now entering year number 4. It's basically a 5-year deal. They got the 5th-year option because of the first-round pick, which was a very smart move by them. But, maybe Lamar Jackson this offseason gets a contract extension. We don't know. So we'll find out. As I said, the Marshall Yanda loss was huge. They still have a really good secondary. I think it's very solid, of course, but they could use some help at linebacker next to Patrick Queen. I feel like they have no other linebackers there. So we'll find out what they do. They need to improve, as I said, wide receiver, another playmaker, and they need to add another linebacker. Maybe a pass rusher as well, because if they lose either Ngakoue or Judon or even both, you're now down a couple pass rushers or even one. So they need to add a guy there as well. They still have some cap room because Lamar Jackson is still on the rookie contract, but eventually that cap room will go away. So you got to be careful going forward. Number 4, I have the Los Angeles Chargers. So yes, the Chargers went 7-9 in 2020, which is not great, but the arrow seems to be pointing upwards for the Chargers organization right now. So they had the 2 most important things happen for them in 2020. Justin Herbert's legit and much better than most people that cover the draft and watch college football thought he would be. And number 2, they moved on from Anthony Lynn as head coach, who looked incompetent and overwhelmed at certain points during the year, especially that Buffalo game. That was awful. So the Chargers do have some important free agents like Melvin Ingram, who is a bit up there in age now, so maybe they let him go. Hunter Henry, Mike Pouncey, Denzel Perryman, who had a great year at linebacker. So despite all that, they still have a lot of talent on their roster, and they need Derwin James, their safety, in year 3 now, I think it is, to stay healthy. Maybe it's year 4 because he got hurt the last 2 years. So in year 4, Derwin James needs to stay healthy. Like, that's a big thing, of course. So if he's healthy, it makes our defense a lot better. They still have Joey Bosa, Chris Harris, Justin Jones, Casey Hayward, Nasir Adderley, Rayshawn Jenkins, and last year's first rounder and Kenneth Murray. So they have a good amount of talent on that defense. They need to stay healthy, though. The offensive line, kind of an issue. I mean, they don't have a left tackle. Trey Turner, Brian Bulaga, Mike Pouncey, if he's back, they need to stay healthy and play better because Trey Turner was not as great last year as he usually is. Brian Bulaga didn't look the same and was hurt at some points as well. So they need to get better on the offensive line, although it wasn't terrible. So for me, here's what needs to happen for the Chargers, in my opinion, moving forward. Justin Herbert needs to keep improving. Number 2, Brandon Staley, the new head coach, needs to be an upgrade over Anthony Lynn. Not the hardest thing to do, but still. Number 3, they finally need to fix their kicking woes because their kicking woes have been basically the downfall of this franchise for 15 years or so. I remember Nate Kading back in the day was awful for this team as well, missing field goals in the playoffs, and even the guy after him, I cannot remember. But yeah, they've had a lot of kicking issues for the Chargers. They got rid of Younghoe Koo, who's now a Pro Bowler with the Falcons, so that sucks for them. And they finally need to avoid the injuries. I mean, that's not something you can control, but like I was going to say the Falcons, the Chargers always seem to be injured. It's just every freaking year. Like, they need to have at least 1 year where they avoid the injuries and find a way to close out games, because the Chargers are kind of like minor league Falcons in a way. They always blow leads late in the fourth quarter. They need to find a way to close out games, and hopefully Brandon Staley can help them do that at head coach. So it's a lot to ask for, but the main thing is they have a great young quarterback who hopefully will get better. He answered a lot of questions last year. They have a lot of offensive talent. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. I mean, maybe Hunter Henry if he comes back. Like, they have a lot of talent there. Their defense we just went over. They're a good, all-around team. If Herbert gets better and stays as good as he is, that team has a very high ceiling going forward. Number 3, the Indianapolis Colts. So the Colts, like many other teams on this list, I feel like have an iffy quarterback situation. No more Phillip Rivers because of retirement. Jacoby Brissett's a free agent. Now, there are talks about them getting Carson Wentz, and some people think Carson Wentz is done, broke, finished. I think Carson Wentz, it's fixable. I don't think Carson Wentz will ever be an MVP candidate like he was back in 2017, but I feel like you can still find a way to get the 2018-2019 version of Carson Wentz back. That's my opinion. We'll see how his career plays out. They still have a dominant offensive line for the Colts, and even the talent on their roster is still very good. They're top 3 in cap space still, somehow, I guess because they have no quarterback, but they're still top 3 in cap space entering this offseason. They do have a lot of veteran free agents this year that are pretty key. T.Y. Hilton, he kind of fell off this year. I don't know if they're going to resign him. Justin Houston, I would bring him back if I was them. Xavier Rhodes, who had a nice year. Malik Hooker, Zach Pascal, Trey Burton. Like, they have some guys there. Now, the reason the Colts are so good now is because they have a lot of young talent on their rookie contracts. Now, here's a list of guys once again. Quentin Nelson, who's on a Hall of Fame pace right now. Kyrie Willis, who's a safety from, I think, Michigan State a couple years ago. Julian Blackmon was a rookie this year, showed some really nice moments for him. Michael Pittman Jr., second-round pick. Jonathan Taylor was a second-round pick. Darius Leonard, a former second-round pick, who's an awesome player. Bobby Okereke, Kenny Moore, Rock Ya-Sin, who needs to get a bit better, I'll admit that. But he's not young. He's not on a rookie contract, but DeForest Buckner is a guy they traded for last year, traded their first-round pick for him. He was awesome as well, so he's still one of the best defensive line players in the league. So if they fill in this quarterback position and they add one or two playmakers, maybe finally get a healthy season out of Paris Campbell, I feel like the Colts are in a great spot with their cap space, with the endless possibilities of who they can trade for, because they can afford any quarterback. That's really the main thing. They can afford any contract or anything like that. So if the Colts find a way to bring in a quarterback, or if they bring in Carson Wentz and Carson Wentz is fixed, they should be great. So I think the Colts are in a good spot. I always felt like with Phillip Rivers, if you kept up with my spread pick show the entire year, I was never a believer in the Colts because I always felt like there was a ceiling that was on that team. They were kind of like maxed out in a way because Phillip Rivers was not going to bring you to a Super Bowl. I felt like they just were not that good with Phillip Rivers at quarterback. But if they make a quarterback improvement and this quarterback plays at a very high level, the Colts are all of a sudden a Super Bowl contending type team. So that's the exciting part about it. So we'll find out what they do. Depends who's throwing the ball for them next year, but they're looking pretty good going forward, I will say that. Number 2, we have the Buffalo Bills. So Brandon Beane, their GM, won Executive of the Year, which is definitely well deserving. Their head coach, Sean McDermott's been really good there since he's been there. And the reason I picked the Bills, of course, is because, their 24-year-old quarterback in year number 3, Josh Allen, had this breakout year. I mean, Josh Allen, as we know, had one of the highest ceilings in football. He had all the tools, great body type and all that for a quarterback, very physical guy. And, Josh Allen finally put it all together. There were some mechanical issues that were fixed in his game, and I think he went to Jordan Palmer or something last offseason and fixed his front foot to help his accuracy. He had a 69% completion percentage. His career completion percentage, including that year, was 61%. So, it must have been in like the 50s before that. So that's awesome to see. He had 37 passing touchdowns, had over 4,500 yards, and had a great rushing season as well for a quarterback. So Josh Allen seems like he's here to stay. I hope he has a nice career, and Bills fans definitely hope that as well. But he's definitely one of the best quarterbacks in football now, an MVP candidate, although Aaron Rodgers will probably win that, but still, he's definitely in the top 3. So on defense, their secondary for the Bills is loaded. I guess they could use another cornerback in the slot, especially. That's one thing. Their linebacking core is good. When Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano play together, they're really good. Sometimes they're not as good when those guys miss time, but Milano's a free agent. We'll see if the Bills bring him back. I feel like they will, but we'll find out. The defensive line for the Bills is pretty impressive. Jerry Hughes was good this year. Star Lotulelei, I feel like he was out this season, with the COVID stuff, but a guy like Ed Oliver, who's entering year 3, has to be better. He was terrible against the run this year. A pretty good pass rusher, but I was a big Ed Oliver fan. I expected a lot more. He's a physical freak. I don't know why he's not doing well against the run, but he has to get better at it. For the offensive line for the Bills, they're in good shape for the most part. They could use, some guard improvements. Darrell Williams at right tackle was great, but he's a free agent on a 1-year deal. So we'll see if they bring him back or not. They could use some running back help, tight end help, outside of Dawson Knox, of course. But this roster's in really good shape. And Brandon Beane, part of what he does as a GM is he has not given a huge contract out to somebody yet. His biggest move, of course, was acquiring Stephon Diggs, who we didn't even talk about yet. Stephon Diggs was an awesome move. Even Gabriel Davis at wide receiver, John Brown. He has not given a free agent yet this big contract. Brandon Beane has done a really good job of spreading out those contracts and giving it to players that aren't really a lot of teams did not go after. Teams that a lot of guys are on 1 or 2 year contracts, not for a lot of money, but those moves end up working out perfectly. Cole Beasley is a perfect example of that. The Bills didn't give him a massive contract, but he's been a great return on investment so far for the Buffalo Bills. So they've done a great job over there of just taking advantage of free agency and the market, and we'll see if they do that going forward. But yeah, if this is the Josh Allen and this Josh Allen's here to stay, Buffalo should be a contender for the next, foreseeable future, 5 to 10 years maybe if we're going that far, but they're in a really good spot and they have a great GM, great head coach as well. And number one, I feel like this would be like a free space if we're playing bingo or making a bingo reference, but the Kansas City Chiefs, I feel like you have to say Andy Reid, great head coach, Steve Spagnuolo, defense coordinator Eric Bieniemy's there. That coaching staff is still intact now. And yeah, they're about to possibly win another Super Bowl tomorrow. This should have been their third Super Bowl in a row because, you know, they're basically a D forward offsides play away from being there in 2018. So yeah, they're in a great spot. Patrick Mahomes is the best player on the planet. Their offense is close to unstoppable. Now, their offensive line is not perfect, but they always find a way to make it work. Eric Fisher, the left tackle, being out. I don't know if he'll be out all of next year too, but him being out for now and even just the foreseeable future, probably at least the first half of next year, definitely a concern at left tackle, but we'll see how the Chiefs, you know, fix that. Mike Remmers has been a good fill-in so far for them. Defensively, they're about league average, but that's fine when you have an offense like the Chiefs. I mean, they have guys like Chris Jones, Tyrann Mathieu, Bashaud Breeland, Travarius Ward, L'Jarius Sneed, Frank Clark, Derek Nottie, maybe Willie Gay Jr. going forward, who, you know, didn't really play much this year, but I feel like I liked him a lot in college, so we'll see if he can come back in year two. But you know, the Chiefs don't have a perfect roster, but when you have Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, an offensive line that can keep you upright and a decent running game, which, you know, Andy Reid does not run the ball a lot, but even having an average defense is fine. I feel like they can use some improvements on this roster, like Daniel Sorensen. Definitely can use an improvement there. They can use another pass rusher, in my opinion. So their defense is fine. It could be better, but the offense right now, I guess outside of some offensive line problems in the future, they're fine. So the Chiefs right now seem like they're in a great spot. So that'll do it for this video. Let me know in the comments once again, who do you think has the brightest future, or make a list yourself. Of course, there's like some teams that are kind of caught in the middle of like, we don't know what they're going to be. Like for me, my favorite team, the Giants, I don't think the Giants are in a bad spot, but I also don't think they're in a good spot. I don't know where the Giants are. A team like the Minnesota Vikings, the same thing. Like there are teams out there like the Raiders. There's teams out there that you're like, oh, we don't really know. Even the Seattle Seahawks. So we'll find out. Even like the Rams. I mean, you could like the Rams because like maybe you just were in love with the Stafford trade and think it's going to work out. I personally don't know. I feel like it could go in a bad direction, of course, with not having draft picks, of course. So, you know, I can't say you have a bright future when you don't own draft picks till 2023 or something. So I can't really say that. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you want a video for teams with the darkest futures. I could do that as well. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you if you made it to the end. Leave a like if you did, and I'll talk to you next time.